Good evening, guys. This is Javier with the Real Javier Novoa channel, where we talk about the principles of interiorism and how it applies to rapid lifestyle transformation. Of course, a huge part of that is investing, and we have been talking about in the last few videos investing, about how to transform your lifestyle financially and so on. And I've got to talk about Bitcoin, guys. I've got to actually make a short but comprehensive video answering the questions about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency vis-a-vis interiorism and vis-a-vis our investment strategy. I've gotten so many questions about it, guys, and I myself, of course the Real Javier Novoa channel, have been making a lot of returns on our bets, so to speak, and on our investments on Bitcoin. It's been purely Bitcoin, guys, so I just wanted to address it a little bit because, you see, in my opinion, Bitcoin is the spiritual currency. Now, it's the spiritual money, and we're going to explain why that is. But before I make any of these comments, I want to put the disclaimer again. I'm not an investment advisor by any means. Don't take advice from me. Don't listen to me, guys. Consider this just as a chat between friends about investing. I'm just telling you what I do and the way I see the world. You can take it as you will. Do not follow any advice that you can then say, Javier gave me this advice, so I followed it. In this channel, we're against following authorities. We're against seeking authorities. What we're about on this channel is actual investigation. You have to do the research yourself. You have to do the investigation yourself. I hope this chat can just point you in the right direction because, again, we've gotten a lot of questions about Bitcoin. So the first thing, just about a little bit a segue about the investment aspect of Bitcoin, guys. We are in the middle of the biggest transfer of wealth in the history of the world. And wealth is going to be going from the people who have been physical gatekeepers, people of physical property, people of scarce resources that had the leverage over information, over communication, and so on and so forth. The days of that people having that leverage are gone. And now the wealth is going to those who have the asset right here, the asset of the mind, and the asset to create services that are digital, guys. Most of this stuff now is digital, and of course we have to have the physical infrastructure to do that. But the digital flow of information, of services, and so on and so forth, and of goods, you have Amazon.com and others, of course, for a long time, that were able to transport goods by ordering them digitally. Well, this digital communication and this digital flow of information is the order of the day. Therefore, the new rich, the nouveau rich, have been and are going to be those people who are able to leverage the digital flow of information, guys, and digital services. Because most of the things that we had to pay for 20 years ago are becoming free in the digital sphere. For example, I was reading about a very famous musician, and I know other people like Matt Damon and famous actors have said this. The era of someone just becoming a superstar, right? Whether it be in music or movies, and then simply having a monopoly on that brand, and then just making tons of money and being a superstar, those days are over, guys. Because now, through AI, and I think a lot of AI is hype, but a lot of it also is putting these tools in the hands of common people through AI, people are able to bring entertainment and also bring information out without going through the gatekeeper. I mean, would a channel like mine have been possible 10 or 15 years ago? It would never get past the gatekeepers. But now there are no gatekeepers. Why? Because that Berlin Wall, so to speak, of analog has fallen and given way to the superhighway of the digital information economy. That's what we're in, guys, the digital information economy. So when we invest, I think we have to invest accordingly. And I am investing accordingly. I am placing bets. Now, as we talked about the other day, and the way I set up my investment portfolio, again, not advice, but the way I set it up is, The first is the Warren Buffett portfolio, and that's basically long-term buy and hold investing, and that's where the lion's share of my portfolio goes. It's basically conservative companies, although there are some tech companies in there, and it's companies that have a track record, management that I trust. Then, of course, there's trading, and I am basically, as I've said before, a somewhat mechanical trader in that I program my stops, I program my limit orders, and I basically know what I'm going to lose and know how much I can make on every trade, barring some kind of catastrophe. And those catastrophes, by definition, don't happen often. Otherwise, my trading account would be wiped out. And then the third folder is that George Soros folder, or that George Soros bucket. And this is the bucket that I'm using to invest in cryptocurrency. So I'm all in Bitcoin. I'm going to tell you how I'm investing in that in just a second. But just so that you know how I'm conducting this and how, if you were a friend of mine, I would recommend, not advise because I'm not an investment advisor, but I would say that I think it's a good idea that you do this, is you set aside that speculative part of your portfolio that we can call the George Soros or the social arbitrage portion of your portfolio, and you put that money all in, guys, into Bitcoin. And you can do it in other cryptocurrencies too, because a lot of them are going up. But as we've seen now in currencies like, Dogecoin, they've been flat while Bitcoin's continued to go up. Of course, Bitcoin is still very volatile, and there's good reason for that we'll go into. But so I've put a small portion of my portfolio, small but significant, guys, so that I can capture the upside into Bitcoin and all into Bitcoin. And why have I done this, guys? Because it's my investment thesis that due to a cascade of factors, such as economic uncertainty, such as a loss of trust in the dollar, such as a more widespread knowledge and acceptance of the fact that the United States is the biggest debtor nation in the world, combining that with the fact that Bitcoin has all of the qualities of gold, the good qualities, while foregoing some of the limiting qualities, like, for example, the difficulty of transferring gold and so on and so forth, the difficulty of taking it across borders. Well, Bitcoin solves a lot of those problems. And the factor that we're probably going to war, guys. There's a lot of wars already started, and there are wars brewing, and we'll make another video about that. All of these factors are coming together to allow me to put forward the thesis that people are going to be seeking alternative currencies, people are going to be seeking alternative safe havens, and that safe haven, guys, is Bitcoin. It's being proved to be Bitcoin, and I believe the thesis will bear me out, and we'll talk about why. But just first, what am I doing in Bitcoin? I'm taking roughly half of my George Soros folder, or my George Soros bucket, and I'm putting it into actual physical Bitcoins. Now, a word of warning, guys. Learn about Bitcoin first. Don't go out and get a Bitcoin wallet just anywhere and then hold physical Bitcoin. Don't rush into this. There's a fine line between seizing the opportunity, which I'm encouraging everybody to do, and FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And again, as we know in interiorism, if you act on fear, if you act on lack, you're of course going to get more lack. But if you act from abundance, then you're going to be able to get more abundance. As Michael Saylor said, and if you guys don't know who Michael Saylor is, you better listen up. He's one of the greatest visionaries of today, the CEO of MicroStrategy, and he has gone all in on Bitcoin. That's another strengthening factor. It's not the main factor, but it's a factor that strengthens my confidence that Bitcoin is one of the major asset classes of the future, if not the best asset class, is because Michael Saylor's basically put billions of dollars and even borrowed money to buy Bitcoin, and basically his entire company is now a holder of Bitcoin and a company of Bitcoin services. So yes, I'm putting half of that portfolio, that's very speculative portfolio, guys. That means don't put the money that you're eating on, and don't put your hard-saved money into this, because it is still very speculative, guys. I'm not saying that I know where this is going, We think we do and we hope we do, but don't bet the farm on it yet. You might, it depends on your risk tolerance and so on and so forth. But the other half of that speculative portfolio, I am putting this into an ETF, an exchange traded fund, and you need to research what exchange traded funds are if you don't know. It's called BITX, and it is a 2 times leverage on Bitcoin. It does this through the purchase of Bitcoin futures contracts. And this was part of the cascade and avalanche of ETFs and funds that got into Bitcoin last month. Bitcoin is now an accepted, lawful, if not, I don't think there's kind of security yet, but it is now basically regulated and lawful on Wall Street. And so Wall Street is able to create funds and has been creating funds, so to speak, that play with Bitcoin leverage Bitcoin. So this 2 times leverage means that when Bitcoin is up 5%, as it was about that much earlier today, I will get 10% return on that. And so, of course, this is speculative. That ETF may not always match Bitcoin, so therefore I'm not putting everything into it. I'm putting half of the resources into it. It's been a good play. And this is basically, for me, guys, a social arbitrage investment, which means my Bitcoin I'm going to hold on to for years, guys, because it's my belief, and again, it's my opinion, and don't take my advice. It's my opinion that you'll be able to retire on Bitcoin if you put enough resources into it. And what I don't advise, because I'm not an investment advisor, but if I were your friend, what I would say I would do is put a little bit of money each month into buying actual Bitcoins once you research it. Because we're going to get into the reasons why, but I believe that Bitcoin is going to be, if not the currency, one of the major currency standards of the future. So that's what I'm doing, guys. And here's my major thesis. And Michael Saylor has spoken about this from the standpoint of Bitcoin is, he calls it energy, an ossified energy, and I believe it is. I believe it is a spiritual currency. Why? Because Bitcoin was started from nothing. But it is not the Bitcoin itself that is the commodity, because from Austrian economics we know that currency is started from a commodity that is then held as the most marketable commodity, because it's believed that that commodity will be demanded by others, and so therefore you don't have to barter and so on and so forth. I've talked about this in other videos, but if you want to read a great economic analysis of Bitcoin and why it is the natural successor to gold and why it is a valid currency, you need to read the Bitcoin Standard. It's a great book called The Bitcoin Standard by a Professor Saifuddin Ammous from Lebanon, who is an Austrian economist, professor of economics, and he wrote this book called The Bitcoin Standard. He traces it all the way back from the sound money theory of the Austrian economists, from gold, and that Bitcoin is the natural successor of gold, and I believe that it matches gold in all the good qualities. And what he says in the book, his conclusion is, it's not feasible that Bitcoin is going to become the currency, guys. It's not necessarily feasible that prices at Walmart will reflect Bitcoin prices, although they may. What's more feasible is that central banks and other currencies, in order to shore up the value of their currencies, they're going to be buying Bitcoin as a sort of standard or a backup for their currencies. And also more international trade will be conducted in Bitcoin. Why? The Chinese and the Russians are already rumored to be starting a currency with blockchain. And blockchain is the asset here. And that's where I was going again with this, is that Bitcoin itself is nothing. It's not an actual coin. What it is a line of code. But that code, the reason why it's desirable to have that code, because it's within a system. And to understand these aspects, you have to be a systems thinker. And to very much simplify it, again, I'd recommend reading Saifuddin Ammous and his book, The Bitcoin Standard. There is a blockchain, and a blockchain is basically the fact that in Bitcoin, nobody trusts anybody because it's all anonymous. That's another beautiful factor of Bitcoin. It's also a paradox, Because Bitcoin is based on no trust, it will actually be the most trusted currency. And why is that? Now to transfer dollars or even to transfer gold, I have to go through an institution. I have to send my information to a central institution. I have to pay that institution to now act as a middleman to transfer my money to you. In Bitcoin, you simply make a transfer, and the person receiving that Bitcoin has confidence that this is a true Bitcoin. Why? Because first of all, every single owner of a Bitcoin, if he or she desires, has access to have a Bitcoin node or a Bitcoin computer, which is a point in the whole network. And each node has the ledger of every transaction ever conducted in the history of Bitcoin. That's the way Bitcoin is transacted with trust. That's how you know that the Bitcoin you received is an actual Bitcoin, because you have the entire past ledger. It's sort of like, if anyone understands the Islamic tradition, the tradition of the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, there's an isnad, which is a chain of narration. So-and-so told so-and-so told so-and-so, and that's how, in the Islamic tradition, you trust that something was from the Prophet Muhammad. Well, in Bitcoin, there's an isnad, or a chain of narration, going from the first creator of the Bitcoin, Satoshi, to the next person, until it gets to you. That's how you know it's legitimate. So that's paradox there. Because it's based on no trust, it has trust, guys. And because of that, we can have confidence in Bitcoin as a commodity. Why? Because of the system that Bitcoin is built of. At least that's my understanding and my theory, and you can take that as it will. Why is it a spiritual currency, or the only spiritual currency, I believe? It's a spiritual currency now because it is anonymous, and because it is decentralized, and because people will use it of their own free will, and because of the fact, how do you mine Bitcoin? Of course, many people may know this, but just for those who don't. Bitcoin miners actually make new Bitcoins, which is being halved, by the way, in April, and we can talk about that more. They make it by composing the ledger. They basically get transactions and compose them into blocks, and then compose those blocks into blockchains. The way that they know those are correctly ordered is by very difficult mathematical equations that are basically baked into the Bitcoin program. When they solve an equation, they get as a reward a certain number of Bitcoin. I believe it's going to be cut to 3.5 or something like that. Now, these people who are miners create Bitcoin again through composing the ledger. And that's how you can be certain that that ledger is correctly composed. I hope you understand me just a little bit. So you're having certainty without having to depend on an outer authority figure. Now, because it is scarce, there's scarcity baked into the system, because Bitcoin will only ever be able to mine or produce 21 million Bitcoin. After that time, the miners will no longer get a subsidy of Bitcoin, rather they'll be paid fees and so on and so forth. So it will still behoove some people to act as miners and to compile the ledger and so on and so forth. But it is scarce, guys. Even gold is not scarce. So Bitcoin takes the spiritual qualities of gold, like scarcity, like portability, like being a unit of account, without actually having to have a physical object behind it. Now, if you think about even gold, that is spiritual, because why? Nothing, as we know in Austrian economics, nothing is valued in res. Nothing is valued for a specific quality, right? It's only valued because of the fact that you value it. So all valuation is subjective. And why did people value gold in the beginning? It was shiny, guys. Now, gold does have a lot of uses in electronic systems, so on and so forth. But the actual usage of gold as a commodity is only 10% of its total existence and total output. And even the majority of that is just used as jewelry. Just used for the bling-bling. Just for the aesthetic qualities. We could call that spiritual qualities, while a little bit of it is used in electricity. So in that sense, gold is not much different from Bitcoin. However, gold has the drawback of being a physical commodity, which is good, but it has a very high value per unit, which is also good, but it's hard to carry around, it's hard to transfer. Whereas Bitcoin can be digitally transferred within a matter of a few minutes. So I believe that Bitcoin is the spiritual currency, and as others have said, it's a currency of limiting government, and it's a currency of peace. Because it's limited as the amount that it can be made, because it's decentralized, no government can take control of that and then use that to control the people. It is free, it is independent, it is conducive of free trade, and it is naturally suited to the free market. In fact, even the great Austrian economist Hayek talked about the fact that someday we will have to contrive some means to get around these planners. I believe Bitcoin is that means. And by the way, when it comes to asking me, should we invest in other cryptocurrencies, I'd say go for it for the short term. Trade them. You can gamble on them, but remember to cut your losses, limit your losses. But I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. Why? Because Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency that has so far stood the test of time, 14, 15 years, and it has the biggest network, and therefore it has the greatest security. Because in order to sabotage Bitcoin, one would have to have over 51% of the nodes in a network. That would be very expensive. And what are the only two reasons someone would want to sabotage Bitcoin? Either to get Bitcoins, but if one sabotaged Bitcoin, that would automatically destroy the value of Bitcoin. So in that very process, they would lose value. So it would not be worth their while to do it, or to destroy and take down Bitcoin. But the fact that it is a growing network, and the fact that there's so much computing power involved, makes it very unlikely that someone would do that simply because of the sheer cost. It makes more sense to play ball, guys. It makes more sense to try to get Bitcoins to earn Bitcoins. So that's my little thesis on Bitcoin. I believe it is the most spiritual currency. I think it's the future, guys. And as Saifuddin Ammous talks about in his book, when Bitcoin becomes a currency, it's going to be a stable, relative as stable as it can be, store of value. While it's seeking its level, and we're still in the very early days of this, guys, it is going to be volatile. And it's that very volatility that provides traders and people who are willing to take risks with chances of great gains on this. I believe in the years to come we can have great gains in Bitcoin, guys. There's still a lot of room. Michael Saylor says it can go to 100,000 to 1,000,000, and he is putting his money where his mouth is. So I believe in Bitcoin. I believe in the future of Bitcoin. I'm buying more Bitcoin every month, and something that you should consider, guys. And again, don't take advice from me, but remember, do your research. Do not go buying Bitcoins unless you do your research. There's a lot of material out there on YouTube. The book, The Bitcoin Standard by Dr. Saifuddin, is the best resource for this. So that's just my little take on this, guys, and hope it's helpful. Remember, we are doing coaching calls where I can take you hand in hand through this modality of interiorism. We can apply it to your life to make more gains in the next few months than many people make in years. I will put my email in the description. Email me to jump on a call. Also, guys, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Not only will you be joining our community of master manifestors, you'll be helping me get the word out. We're going to be giving you the tools and giving you the steps, should you choose to use them, to navigate these tough times ahead and to indeed benefit and prosper. Prosperity for yourself and for your family. So until very soon, guys, it's Javier with The Real Javier Novoa. Ciao.